Welcome back, everybody, to another podcast. Today is a little bit different than what we normally do. In honor of National Kidney Month, which is March, and in memory of my father, I'm putting on a campaign this month, as many of you have seen. And today we are bringing on Coach Tom Walter from Wake Forest and Kevin Jordan, an alum from Wake Forest. They have a really interesting story that can bring awareness to everybody about kidney disease. Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning, Josh.
Good morning, Josh.
Let's go to the most important man in the room, Kevin Jordan. We'll start with you. Get in the Game is something that you and Coach Walter have started together since you left Wake Forest. What is that about?
Yeah, it obviously it started with 10 years ago when Coach reached out to me when I came in on the campus, in the middle of kidney failure, complete kidney failure, and he went to our first doctor's visit. So he sat in and heard the doctor say, "Hey, like the kidney's not coming back. He's going to need a transplant." And that day he said, "I think I'm the same blood type. Like I'm going to get tested." And throughout that fall, I would visit him and during the days, and he would tell me, "Hey, I'm going to get tested." And maybe I visit a week later, he would say, "Hey, I got tested. I'm going to go through the process." And maybe a month later, it was like, "Hey, like I think we're matched. Like I think we're gonna." And by January of 2011, he called me, and I was at home, and he said, "Hey, we have a match. We have a date, February 7th. I'm going to give you my kidney." And, I was speechless. But you can fast forward through the time I played for him. And even after I graduated, we kept in touch. But into 2020, which we all know was just an interesting year as a whole. But, I was off. He was not working as much because of the pandemic. And, the George Floyd thing happened. And, all the riots and everything that happened. And he called me just to check on me. So he was just checking on me, and we talked and talked and talked. And we were like, "Hey, like we can do something. We can use our story. The idea that his and my blood are the same can carry us into something that we can build to help somebody." And, we got with the right people, and, Amanda and Michael, and who work on our staff, and ended up creating Getting a Game. And Getting a Game is it's really built around equity, equality, and we wanted to really focus on the next generation. So for me, the thought was, I want to do what Coach did for me, I want to do for these kids. And obviously I can't give them a kidney, so my way of giving back to them is creating this platform where they can handle their social issues, learn about race, be more comfortable about race and different cultures. And we think that's going to help them out and help our society out going forward. So that's really my spiel on Getting a Game. And Coach will tell you a little bit more about his story, because I love the stories that he tells about how this thing got started.
Coach, give us your end of Getting the Game and what's going on with that.
Yeah, so like Kevin said, it all started with a conversation this summer. I was telling Kevin a story about how when I learned I was a match, I went to somebody that I needed to go to, and somebody that I trust and respect. And I said, "I want to give my kidney to Kevin Jordan. Are you okay with that?" And he said, "Well, can you do that?" And I was like, "What do you mean?" And he's like, "Well, isn't Kevin black?" And I was surprised by that question. And then as I thought about it, it wasn't a racist or a malicious question. It was just a not understanding science question. And I remember my answer very well. And that's, "Well, yeah, my blood and his blood are the same. And that's all that matters." And as I told Kevin that story. Kevin had never heard that story previous to this summer when I called him after George Floyd just to check on him, as he said. I was calling all my, former players of color to see how they and their families were doing. It was just a crazy time for everybody. And I was telling Kevin that story. And as I told him that, I mean, I think we were both trying to think of ways we could make a difference, right, in this conversation. I mean, for the past, 20 some odd years, I've been a head baseball coach at a Division I institution. So I've had a direct influence on 35 guys a year. but how do we broaden that message and deepen that scope? And as I told Kevin that story, it just hit me like a bolt of lightning that, that's kind of the message our world needs to hear right now. They need to see Kevin and I standing next to each other saying our blood is the same and that's all that matters. And that when you come together and you believe in each other and you love one another, right, great things can happen, miracles can happen. And that's kind of, how this thing got started. Like Kevin said, I called Amanda and I said, this is what I want to do. I want to go to the school with Kevin and I want to get in front of these kids, tell our story about shared blood and then parlay this into conversation about systemic and institutional racism. And, I don't want to be a motivational speaker where we go in there for 45 minutes and, 48 hours, everybody forgets everything we said and they just go back to their normal life. I want to deliver curriculum and content so these kids can, like Kevin said, get fluent in this race conversation, so they can have these conversations. In this original story, Josh, nobody talked about race. Like it didn't come up at all. And, I know from experience how powerful that story was in the Black community because it was unexpected. You know what I mean? In the Black community, it's unexpected that an old white guy would give a kidney to a young Black guy, right? I mean, it's just not, and we need to change that, quite honestly. I mean, just yesterday, I had somebody here at Wake Forest come up to me, an elderly Black gentleman come up to me with tears in his eyes yesterday at our stadium and was like, man, I just learned of your story and I just can't even tell you how much that means to me. And again, that stuff happens all the time because it's a powerful story about race and coming together. And so, that's what, at the end of the day, that's what Get in the Game is. And we've hired Kevin full time. I told Kevin that this is what I wanted to do. And he moved to Winston-Salem like 3 days later. And he's been a full-time employee ever since.
Kevin, did race come to your mind at all at the time when you guys were going through the donor process?
Not so much, but it was always there. What happened is, to me, actually, the weirdest, or the craziest thing was for my granddad. I mean, my granddad's 101 years old, so to see his reaction, I mean, speechless, halfway in tears, just saying, that's not supposed to happen. Like that's not supposed to happen like that. And that's all. He's a man of few words. But that's all he said to me, and that's really been the only time that I really had to think about race because it happened so quick, and my goal was to get back on the field. Like I wanted to play for this guy after he gave me the kidney. I wanted to play for him. So my mind was on baseball and everything else, and it took the events to happen this summer to even bring out that conversation. But I will tell you, sitting in the living room, my granddad, who was, in his 90s at the time, and to hear him say that, it kind of took me back a little bit. But I think I may have been just a little too young to really digest it.
That's amazing. I'm kind of speechless. It's not something personally I thought of, but it makes sense when you bring it up. Kevin, so you're from Atlanta, correct? Did I get that right? Okay, and you were pretty good at baseball. You got drafted by the Yankees in 2010. You knew you were sick already at that time. So before we jump into that part of the story, what was your illness and when did you find out?
Yeah, it was ANCA vasculitis, pronounced ANCA vasculitis. We found out in May of 2010, which was in the middle of my senior season of baseball. It was actually in the middle of the Georgia high school state playoffs, and we found out it was something with the kidney, and it took until June until they diagnosed vasculitis. But I was still going to pro workouts, and I still ran a sub 760, with no kidney function, with little to no kidney function, which is that's pretty good speed. And I was at all the pro showcases, and I knew that I was going on dialysis. But I kind of just wanted to keep the experience and keep going through. And So the day I got drafted, I was, in the hospital. They had just put the tubes in, right below my neck, right in my right upper chest. And, the GM for the Yankees, Brian Cashman at the time, called me and said, "Congratulations, we drafted you with the pick in the 19th round." And, it was awesome at the same time, but it just reminded me that I'm not going to be able to go on that journey right now. So it was a pretty cool experience to have Brian Cashman call me from the Yankees. But, when I got drafted, I was I was getting the tubes in to do dialysis.
And for anybody who doesn't know dialysis, that was it's a process in which basically they take the blood out of you, filter it through a machine to clean it because your kidneys are not operating correctly to clean the blood, and then it goes back through another tube and filters back into your body as clean blood. And it's an exhausting process, right?
Yeah.
How did you feel? Like, I remember what my dad used to tell me, and now he was older and not very healthy to begin with otherwise, but I remember how he would explain it, and just watching how exhausted he would be as the weeks went on and he had to do it more and more. Like, how did it make you feel?
Yeah, no, it's physically draining for sure. Obviously, I was used to being one of the stronger, one of the fastest kids on any field I ever stepped on. So for me to have to go through that, and I'm in there with 60 and 70-year-old ladies, and we're having a conversation and stuff, but I'm like, I'm not supposed to be here. But the way it made me feel, really, I think it affected me more mentally. I just didn't think I was, supposed to be here. That wasn't part of the journey, but I accepted it. And the physical part, I just kind of dealt with it, with the idea that, somehow this is going to turn around. I don't know how, but somehow it's going to turn around. And it was a coach to step up for me at that time.
Coach, did you know that he was suffering from kidney disease when you were recruiting him?
So not when we signed him in the fall. He hadn't gotten the ANCA bacteria yet. What happened was the first time I was alerted to there being a problem was I got a call from a scout friend of mine in Castleberry. Called me and he was like, "Hey, I just saw Kevin." This was like in February, late February, early March. And he's like, "Hey, I just saw Kevin Jordan play and he doesn't look good. It looks like he's lost some weight. He's not moving real well. He's kind of lethargic." And so I called Kevin's dad and I said, "Hey, is everything okay?" And Kevin's dad was like, "Yeah, he's just got a little virus. And, we expect to, we went to see the local doctor here and, gave him some antibiotics or whatever. And we expect it to clear up and he'll be fine." And I was like, "Okay." So then I got another call about a month later, saying that he had lost more weight and now he was missing some games from time to time. And at that point, I called Kevin's agent, Joel, with the Wasserman Group, Joel Wolf. And I said, "Joel," I said, "what do you got? What's going on here?" And he said, "Well," he goes, "quite honestly, we don't know." He goes, "But we just got him set up at Emory Hospital to be seen by specialists." He was at this time in January, February, and March, he's just going to the local doctor in Columbus, Georgia, Vienna, Georgia, and not, seeing a specialist. And then in April, as I remember it, and Kevin, correct me if I'm wrong, he got to Emory and to a nephrologist who diagnosed him with this ANCA bacteria. And by the time he got to campus in August, he was down to about 8% kidney function. And I sat in that meeting with him and his parents at the hospital when he met his new doctor. And again, people give me a lot of credit in this story, Josh, but the credit in this story is Kevin Jordan. I mean, you think about, being an 18-year-old kid, uprooting your life when you have 8% kidney function and moving to Winston-Salem, North Carolina, where you learn that not only do you need a new kidney, that medicine is not going to fix this, but you're also going to have to be on in-room dialysis. You can't have a roommate. He was on dialysis, 18 hours a day. I mean, he was hooked up. He would go home into his dorm at night, hook up from 10 o'clock at night till 8 the next morning. He'd go to class. He'd come back, hook onto the machine again for another cycle. He'd come out to practice and mostly watch, but occasionally take a round of BP. And then he'd go back and do another cycle. I mean, he's doing like 4 cycles of dialysis a day just to survive. And So anyway, the miracle for me and the courage in this story is him showing up on campus and going through what he went through. And, you know, as I've told many people along the way, I mean, I knew it was going to be me. I knew it was going to be me from the first day. I just, just one of those things. When I heard his blood type, I was like, it's destined to be me.
Kevin, did you have any concerns that, you were not going to make it, or you were going to get a call from Coach Walter? Obviously, you didn't know him like you do now back in 2010. Were you worried about being decommitted or getting that call that says maybe this isn't the best idea for you?
Yeah, I think there was a time where I did worry. Everything was kind of falling apart. I was projected to be a top 5 round pick, and, probably higher. And, I had what I was going to buy with my signing bonus. I already knew what car I was going to get. But
what car? What car were you going to get?
It was the Audi sports car from the Transporter movies.
Okay.
Yeah. That was my car back then. But everything started to fall apart when I got sick, and I ended up getting drafted, but I knew I couldn't go, and the only thing left was that scholarship. When talking to Walt, he said we're going to honor the scholarship. We'll figure it out when we get there. So I was like, for him to do that, after we told him like, hey, like, we have kidney failure, like, he could have said, oh, that's too much, but he stuck with me. So I was like, the least I can do is stick with him and show up. So I showed up. I was about 150 pounds. I didn't think, when we invited him to that doctor's appointment, I was like, I don't know if he knows what he's getting into. Like, I'm not the same guy as he recruited. When he saw me, I was probably around almost 200 pounds, mostly muscle. And the next time he saw me that fall I was 150 pounds and just almost lifeless. So for him to really step up for me and honor my scholarship and commit to going to that doctor's appointment. So he committed to me. So I thought the least I could do is commit to him and show up.
Coach Walter, you've gotten plenty of questions regarding baseball and players through your life, but I'm guessing that question was unique and maybe the only time you ever got it to come to a doctor's appointment about kidney failure. And when you got that question, did you find it awkward, or did what was that moment like for you?
No, it was, well, so first of all, Kevin's right. When I met he and his parents at Hutch and Harris restaurant downtown, when they got to town in August to check in, and had Kevin not been sitting with his parents, I would have walked right past it. I mean, 50 pounds lighter, different skin tone, everything was different. He just wasn't, he's right. He wasn't the same guy. He went from looking like a free safety for the Carolina Panthers, to looking like a patient, like looking like somebody who was ill, which he was. So anyway, when we recruit these kids, Josh, we tell them, we're going to treat you like you're our own, like you're part of the family now, and family step, like you've done for your dad and like he would have done for you, right? Family steps up for one another. And so for me, it wasn't a matter of getting asked to go to that doctor's appointment. It was a matter of going to the doctor's appointment. I got to hear, and it blew me away. Like everything that he had been, like I had no idea. And Kevin's right. I had no idea what he had been through from January to the day he stepped foot on this campus. He was taking like 30 pills a day, and he was, hooked up to a dialysis machine. And again, when they showed up in Winston-Salem, they thought medication was going to fix this. And the doctor here was the first time they had seen an adult nephrologist. They had been seeing a pediatric nephrologist at Emory. And he was like, man, medication's not going to fix this. We've got to get you off that medication to see if the ANCA's gone. And if the ANCA's gone, you need a new kidney, period.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you that, Coach. What did you learn about kidney disease? What's one of the things that maybe stuck out with you most about kidney disease? Because I think I think there's a lot of awareness that needs to be raised about it. What's something you learned in the process?
So two things. One, the kidney is an amazing organ, right? So first of all, we have artificial hearts and we have artificial lungs, right? We've got artificial organs that work, but they have not made an artificial kidney that works yet. That's how complex the kidney is. And again, you can't live without cleansing your blood. And what I learned in this was the day before Kevin Jordan's surgery, his creatinine level was 23, right? The normal person, you and I, my creatinine is a little higher than this, but your creatinine is probably about 1, Josh. It's about 1.0 for the normal kind of everyday person that's got 2 functioning kidneys. Kevin's was 23. 1 hour after the surgery, the doctor came in 1 hour after I woke up, I should say, the doctor came in, Kevin's creatinine was already down to 3. 6 hours later, it was down to 1.6. I mean, the kidney is just an incredibly complex and amazing organ that just does incredible things. And so Kevin, within 6-7 hours of the surgery, Kevin's creatinine was already down to an acceptable level. And I remember walking into his room the next day and I was like, how do you feel? And he was like, I feel like I could do 1,000 push-ups right now. He goes, it's the best I've felt in a long time. And again, one of the misnomers about kidney surgery, right, is they tell the donor that the surgery is harder on the donor than it is the recipient. Well, that's a total misnomer. So first of all, they used to kind of open you wide up. Now they do it arthroscopically, and there's not nearly as much risk for infection and things like that. But second to that is the reason they say that is because the donor was healthy and now he's not, and the patient was unhealthy and now he's not. So it's kind of a little bit of a misnomer. It's not riskier for the donor than it is the patient. And then the last thing I'll say, and this is a story that I love sharing because there's just not enough awareness about organ donation in general, right? Let alone, kidney, lung, heart, whatever, right? When I took my son to the North Carolina driver's license office to get his driver's license, the woman at the desk asked him, do you want to be an organ donor? And I'm standing right next to him and he looked her dead in the eye and said, no, thank you. And I looked at him and I was like, dude, what are we doing here? and the point is like, we don't prepare kids for that question, right? They don't know what that question is. Nobody at the DMV prepared them for that question, and parents don't have conversations with their kids about that question and why you should check yes, right? So we have we have thousands of missed opportunities every day across our country to be an organ donor. And I just read a story yesterday of a young man who, met his untimely death and, gave a pancreas and a kidney and eyes and saved, like 6 different people. And so point is that, this organ donation campaign, this just check yes on your driver's license, if we could just to me, you should have to opt out of being an organ donor. You shouldn't have to opt in, right? So to me, that's an easy solution is everybody's an organ donor and let's make it hard for people not to be.
Yeah, I'll force them to get educated. That's interesting. Kevin, I wanted to ask you, because when you hear of chronic kidney disease, you don't hear much about kids. You were a kid, you were a teenager. What did you learn? Like, how does this affect kids in the country?
Yeah, it was actually, I think it was tougher for the kids that I saw around me, because I was 17, I was as strong before I found out that I had that disease. I was as strong as I could have been. I'd had a childhood, I had been great at baseball. I'd kind of seen a lot. I've seen things, but I was in the same hospital with kids that have been dealing with this their whole life. And they may have been like 10 or 12. And it's just, it's hard to be motivated to go through school and to make straight A's. And so it affects, it really, I saw it affect a lot of kids in their overall energy, their, vigor toward life, because they really never had a time where they've been healthy and they got to run around and run free and eat what you want and travel and different things. So I think it's really hard on kids. And I actually got to go back when a couple months after I got transplanted and I wasn't, on the team. I actually went back to the hospital just to kind of say hey to some of the kids that I was in dialysis with at Emory. for the little bit that I was in dialysis there. And just to kind of see their faces and just to say, hey, like, a transplant can happen for you. And, hopefully when that happens for you, you'll come back. And I probably should have did more of that. But like I said, I got so focused on baseball and trying to, be somebody. But that's one thing that I don't think I'll ever, forget again, is to show up for the kids and say, hey, like, I was in your shoes. Like, it gets better, if you get a transplant, it gets better, and you need to come and maybe support some other kid, because it's tough when you're a kid and dealing with kidney failure.
How hard is it to get a transplant, Kevin? Like, I mean, I guess for you, it was just right place, right time. But I mean, I don't know what you went through leading up to finding Coach Walter, having the same blood type. What are other stories of how difficult it really is for kids or adults to find a donor?
Yeah. So, the first time when Coach offered to give me his kidney, it seemed to kind of fly by because I wasn't expecting it. I kind of had almost given up on the fact that college baseball was going to be the route I was going to take, especially at Wake, because I went home. But next thing I know, it was almost next thing I know it happened. So I was lucky in that regard. But fast forward to today, 8 years I had Coach Walt's kidney, and I ended up losing it after an infectious disease that I got over in Dominican Republic in 2018. So since then, I've been looking for a transplant, and it's been 3 years. And because of COVID made it a little harder. I have O positive blood, which means that I could donate to a numerous amount of blood types, but I can only take from I believe O's or O positive or O negative, whatever. So it has been increasingly difficult because I've had donors step up, but they weren't O's, or I have an O donor that didn't have my antibodies. So actually, as of today, we have a match through the PAIR program, and it's been on and off a couple times, but we do have a match for the 24th, and I truly believe that my second transplant will happen on the 24th, and I'm going to cherish that kidney and make it last longer than 8 years, because I'm not going overseas. But no, it is a painstaking process. I will say it's not easy. It's been 3 years for me, and I know people that have talked to me that's had journeys a little longer and shorter, but staying healthy, staying on top of your medications, on top of your numbers. And I'm lucky enough to have parents that I could I went home and my mom whipped me into shape, so that helped a lot. But it's not easy. I would say it's not easy.
What happens? Yeah, Josh, the average wait time on the transplant list is about 5 years. And the reality is, a kidney that you get from a cadaver is not as likely to be successful as a kidney you get from a live donor. So point is, we need more live donors. We need more people that that understand that this is not a huge risk to you. I met a lady. One of the cool things that happened right after this, I spoke at this thing in New York, and the other woman who spoke alongside of me was this woman that in 1969 walked into the Johns Hopkins Hospital in Baltimore and said, "I want to give my kidney." And they were like, "To who?" And she's like, "I have no idea. But I know that I have 2 kidneys and I only need one. So I want to give it to anybody who needs a kidney." And they told her she couldn't do that. Well, she sued. She took it all the way to the Supreme Court, sued, and won her right to give her kidney. So they had to find her a match, which they did. And she donated her kidney to an anonymous person because she walked into a hospital. I mean, so, people all the time talk about how amazing our story is, and it's a great story. And I'm just so thrilled that Kevin is the man that he is, and that I was a small part of that story. But there are people out there doing amazing things in this arena. And I've got to learn about all those things along the way, which has been pretty awesome.
I'll wrap it up here in just a moment. One more question for each of you. Kevin, the average wait time being 5 years, like, I don't know what other words to use, but can't somebody die in that span? Like, are you just sitting there worried like the clock is ticking? Like, what is that like?
Yeah, no, and I had been approached to do last wills and all that type of stuff, and for me, I was like, I just don't feel like that's how my life is going to go. I'm going to keep fighting it. I'm going to fight it as if I'm going to, I'm going to get it. Something's going to happen to turn all this around. And, if it doesn't, I'm going to keep fighting until it does. I just was not willing to accept that I was going to be on dialysis for 5 years and pass away. And that could have very well happened. So, I'm lucky in that regard. But today I've been on dialysis for the last 3 years. I still probably work out about 5 times a week. I try to run around my dogs, and I try to keep somewhat of a normal, life. And my doctors don't really love me for it because that, working out drives your numbers up and all this type of stuff. But I'm like, I have to, that's my life. I can't live my life. What am I doing? So as tough as it is, and as dangerous, it is dangerous just to be on dialysis. And I do recognize that. I'm not naive, but I think there's a certain way that that you want to live your life, and you just kind of hope and pray that someone steps up for you to give you a transplant.
That's
I approached it.
I mean, see, for me, and I don't want to get into my story, but there is one big contrast here. My dad was older. He was already unhealthy. He was not getting the kidney, and he knew that. So he was told, you're going to be a dialysis patient the rest of your life. And you probably can understand what that means more than anybody. And he gave up, he gave up. He was an unhealthy guy. And he's like, I want to live my life. Like, what's the point of sitting here on a dialysis machine 6 days a week just for my life to fade away? Like, I can't do anything anyways. I'm going to die.
I'll tell you this last story. Dr. Friedman, who is my nephrologist at Wake, the first thing he told me was, you're gonna have to give up baseball for a while, because he had heard of me, and for however he did, he knew I was a baseball player. He was like, you're gonna have to give up baseball. You're gonna have to give up that so you can get your numbers down. And my reaction was, why can't I do both? I will work as hard as I need to get my numbers down, but I'm not completely giving up baseball. So I had to, take some days off. I can only do it every other day, but I'm not going to give up what I love, if I can manage it. And I ended up managing it pretty well. But for someone in that stance that is a little bit older and is told, hey, you're not getting a transplant, that is tough. And I wish I had an inspirational word to that person. Besides, the best thing for me under this has been try to make myself useful, useful to somebody else. Because, to be honest, doing the Get in the Game thing has been almost a lifesaver to me, and giving me a reason to wake up before 11 a.m. and get after it every day. So if you can do something for others and make it not about yourself, I think that could give you a whole nother reason to really kind of get after it every day.
It's a great message. I mean, kidney failure is a scary thing. It's a crazy, like, you can't beat it is the thing. With a lot of these other diseases, you can beat it. It's possible, but with kidney disease, you can't beat it. If you can't get the transplant, like there's pretty much only one direction that you're going to go down. Coach Walter, we'll finish up here. What is it like when do any players ever come to you at a practice and say, Coach, I'm not feeling good today? These days, what do you have to say? If you get a player that says, Coach, I'm just not feeling good today in 2021, what do you tell them?
Suck it up, Buttercup.
Oh, man. Well, good stuff, gentlemen. Thank you so much. I'm glad I admire your story. It makes me feel good that this is the first time, like, I don't know anybody else who has dealt with kidney failure or chronic kidney disease. And it is so prevalent out there. So it's good to kind of bring a little community together and maybe teach some people some things, grow awareness. Either one of you want to add anything before I shut us down here?
No, I appreciate you reaching out to both of us. Yeah, I appreciate you. Yeah, thanks for putting this together.
We appreciate you doing this work for the American Kidney Fund. And again, I know that struck close to home and left a hole. But like Kevin said, you're doing something for others with it and making a difference. So thanks.
You guys keep doing what you're doing also, and I'll make sure everybody gets the Get in the Game info so that they can check that program out. Thank you guys.